What is up, guys? Teddy Cornwell here. Welcome to the Underdog Talk, the world's most underrated podcast on earth. Today, you see him, Bengals legend, Huskies legend, a guy with a 4.0 in high school. I just got to throw that in there as well because that's pretty darn good. The one and only Jake Browning. What is up, sir? How you doing today?
I'm good. Good. Thanks for having me on. I think
Yeah.
that I don't know if I had a 4.0. I think I've looked at my Wikipedia page, and I think a lot of it is whoever wrote that for me is really bumping up how good of a person I am and how good I am in school. So I don't know if all that's necessarily true.
Hey, you didn't have to say all that. I mean, we'll we'll leave it at the 4.0. That was a lot better than my high school GPA. I'll tell you that, Jake. But man, how's the off season been? How's everything going? How's everything going in the off season?
Good. We're in the middle of mini camp.
Yep.
Had OTAs last few weeks, so just getting back in the swing of things, and yeah, got a couple more days here mini camp, then head back to California to do. I think we got about 5 weeks off, and then back for training camp and get rolling. So I'm excited.
And I assume that itch is rolling back in terms of getting ready to play some ball and have some fun, right, Jake?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Now, I kind of want to take a little bit back. Your journey was really interesting to me. Obviously, going to Washington and having a stellar career, four-star quarterback. Why pick Washington? I have to ask. Obviously, a very good school in football, but why was Washington your main choice?
Yeah, so I mean, I had some other offers, but I wanted to play in the Pac-12. Grew
Mhm.
up watching it. Grew up. My dad played at Oregon State. Grew up watching USC during like the Reggie Bush days and all that. And then I got recruited pretty hard by Chris Peterson when he was at Boise State. Really liked him. Really liked all the coaches and all that. But I really wanted to play in the Pac-12. And so right after my junior season, he left Boise State to go to Washington, who I'd also been offered under Sark and visited and thought it was cool. And so I went up there on an unofficial right after Coach Pete got there and just felt comfortable, liked it. Had some other visits planned, canceled those, and was like, feel pretty comfortable here. I
Yeah.
really like the coaches. Feel like they got a chance. I thought we had a chance to be like, Washington was always solid, but I thought Coach Pete um, would do a good job, and I'd be able to be a part of something where you get a chance to leave it better than you found it, and it's not necessarily the case at a lot of other places that have had crazy success year after year after year. So I thought that was kind of a cool opportunity.
And a hell of a 4-year career there. And obviously, we had the Boise head coach after him, and I'm actually blanking on his name, so forgive me on that. But yeah, Washington's a rich history, stellar career. Now, obviously, being in college and being at Washington, how did being the quarterback of Washington prepare you or not prepare you for the NFL?
I mean, I think as you can be the most prepared person ever in college. There's still gonna be some adjustments. I would say, really going against our defense every day. When I was
Yeah.
at Washington, I felt like I was ahead of the curve as far as going against good corners, going against good D linemen, going against like an NFL scheme every day. I felt like that helped a lot. I think the like demanding part of Coach Pete um, was really good and kind of helped me create some habits that have definitely benefited me in the NFL. I would say the big thing, like the big area that there's a lot of different reasons for this, but like I really had to change a lot of my throwing motion stuff after college. So I'm sure we're going to get to it, but throughout college, just kind of struggled with arm strength a lot and didn't really know what to do about it. Like I was playing at a high level and couldn't crack the code of like how to actually improve. So I was doing things like back exercises, trying to work on grip strength, trying to do really anything, and just couldn't crack the code until I'm sure we'll get to it. But later in my career, after I left Washington and went and started working with 3D QB, Adam Dato in Huntington Beach, you know, kind of realized I wasn't using my hips at all. So I'd never played a rotational sport. So I would say that was like the main thing looking back that I wish, I think no matter how good you are in college or in anything, you're going to look back 5 years, 6 years ago and say, man, I wish I knew now what I knew, or I wish I knew then what I know now. And I would say that's probably the thing for me that I look back and think about.
Yeah, and I think we all wish we could kind of go back and change things, but I think that's also, kind of what makes us who we are, and your game resembles that today. And obviously, I love your game. I think it's stellar. And I don't know if that would have came if you didn't have those changes in your style. Obviously, now obviously going to Washington. Um, Growing up, did you ever see yourself going to NFL? Was that kind of the end goal for you, or what was that all like, Jake?
I didn't really have like the, writing on my mirror of like, I'm going to be an NFL quarterback or anything like that. Grew up in a football town where it's Folsom, California. It's right outside Sacramento. Went to Folsom High School, which had a pretty long history of really good quarterbacks going there. So like, I mean, I'm not joking when people say like, "Oh, who's your idol quarterback growing up?" And it's like, well, whoever the quarterback was at Folsom High School, I thought was a pretty big deal. And so, I didn't really have those thoughts. I really liked football. Worked hard at it. I was always pretty decent at it. And then I didn't even really think about the college stuff that much until I got named the starter. I competed with another guy for about like eight months straight going into my sophomore year, and I got named the starter the week before. And then the very first game, I threw 10 touchdowns, and I was like, oh, okay, like this might be something. But like I didn't really know it until then. And even through my sophomore year, like, I think I had one offer from Utah. And part of that was because my next door neighbor growing up, his uncle was the head coach at Utah. So I kind of thought like, okay, that's probably why they offered me. But I kind of just one day, one step at a time. And if you would have told me that I was playing in the NFL, then I would have been like, wow, that'd be awesome. But it wasn't necessarily like I'm doing all this so I can go to the NFL. It was just like I'm doing all this because I want to be good at Folsom High School. I want to be as good as some of these other quarterbacks that came through. And kind of same thing at Washington. Like I just want to be a good Washington quarterback, and it all kind of worked itself out.
And I guess looking at Folsom and Washington, obviously you made your mark. Now looking at it, how cool is that you did make a mark and you did set records at both of those schools? That's got to be pretty darn cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's whether you set records or you win a lot of games, you don't. Like I'm proud of the effort I put into it, and I'm really grateful to like be there at both of those stops with some really good coaches and players. And so, I think you further away you get from it, the more you're like, oh, that was pretty cool, and a special time to like be at Washington and be at Folsom. Looking back, and I think you start to appreciate and have fond memories of kind of the different experiences, and appreciation for like the effort that went in and just the people you got to be around. So I feel pretty fortunate, but I'm also not going to discredit. Like I worked pretty hard at it, and obviously that played a role in some of the success. But it takes a lot of people to be good at football.
Damn right. Now, when did you kind of realize that you made it to the NFL? When was that moment where, hey, I'm an NFL quarterback? When was that moment where it kind of settled in for you, Jake?
I mean, I think I'd been in the NFL for like 5 years, going on my 5th year, before I was really like, all right, you're on practice squad, so like, we'll probably get into that too. But like, I was on practice squad for 4 years to start my career. And, you're in the NFL, but you're kind of like, second class NFL a little bit. It feels that way a little bit. And so, I didn't really ever feel like I was used to a certain level of accomplishment from college, a certain level of like notoriety of like being the starter and all that. And then it definitely, it's humbling. Like it's not that I was like a really cocky person, but like it'll test you like mentally going through 4 years of practice squad. And so I would say like the made it moment. I still don't really feel like I've made it. I think business side of all this and it's pretty cutthroat. And
Yeah.
I think the second you start thinking like I made it, you're probably on your decline. So I still have aspirations above where I'm at right now as a player, as far as performance and my position within a team. So I guess really like having my like a good game, like the Jacksonville game.
Yep.
I was like, all
Yep.
right, like they could cut me tomorrow, and at least I can say like I had one good game in the NFL. And
Yeah.
you know, I would say that was like all right, like I'll say I'm an NFL quarterback now. But like that was my 5th year in the NFL.
Yeah, and you're still hungry, and I love that attitude. And they call it the Jake Browning game for a reason, and I love that. And obviously you were on the Vikings practice squad, bouncing back. How did you kind of keep that mentality that hey, I'm still here? How did you kind of stay hungry ultimately and not give up? Because I mean, there are people who would give up if they're not where they should be. How did you kind of stay with that mentality of hey, I'm here to stay?
I think there's a lot of things that go into it. I think the perspective of like, hey, I got friends that wake up every morning and they go to work every day. I got friends that work good jobs but they don't get to say they play in the NFL.
Yeah.
And so I think having that perspective of like, yeah, I'm still pretty fortunate
Yeah.
to be in the NFL, even if I'm on practice squad, I'm not where I want to be. Like that is a starting point of like, there's some gratitude here of like, okay, I'm here. That part's cool. And I'm not going to be just miserable to be around because I'm not where I want to be at. I think the hardest part for people, like, a lot of people, when you really reason with them, will say that. But I think the hard part, a lot of people fall into two categories. And in order to make it kind of through what I went through, you got to take the good from both and avoid the bad. So you have the people that, they think they're getting screwed by their coach, right? And so they never lose their confidence, but they don't make the improvements to their game that they need to in order to be someone that makes the team. And so, if for some reason they get that moment, they usually play confident,
Yeah.
but they haven't made the improvements that are needed because they don't have that drive of like they think they're good enough, they think they're just getting screwed. But in reality, you probably got cut for a reason. You got to make some improvements. The other one is the opposite, where it's the person that's like almost has the imposter syndrome of like, I need to get a lot better. I'm not good enough right now. And that person wakes up really early every morning, goes and works out really hard, makes a lot of improvements. But then when that opportunity does come, it's really hard for them to be like, okay, now I'm the man. So I think being able to see that you need to improve, make the necessary adjustments, create some habits that are going to help you improve. But then also like when that time does come, it's like, I work really hard throughout the week, but when it gets to Sunday, I'm convinced I'm the best player that ever lived. And like, you kind of have to live like you kind of have to play like that. Or otherwise,
Yeah.
it's hard enough, playing well in the NFL. And I think if you're doing it with a lack of confidence, it's pretty tough.
And obviously that confidence was evident in Jacksonville. And I mean, what a win in overtime. Leading to that week, that was your first start in the NFL. How did you prepare for that? Did you do anything different, or like you talked about, was it business as usual? And I'm the best player. I'm going to do what I do normally.
So I was actually my second start. I
Okay.
played against the Ravens. Joe
Yes,
got hurt in I think like the second quarter.
but that was your first start as your first full game, right?
No, I played against Pittsburgh as well. So
Okay.
Joe gets hurt against the Ravens. I played pretty well. We end up losing.
Yeah.
But did I do enough to win the game? No. But did I show like, hey, I'm not completely a fish out of water here?
Yeah.
I felt pretty confident coming away from that of like, I'm pissed we lost. I had every intention of like going in and winning the game. But if you watch on film, you're like, okay, there's some things I need to improve, but there's some stuff here where it's like, all right, like I belong.
Yeah.
First start was against Pittsburgh Steelers, and it was a tough game. We didn't really move the ball much on offense, and for me, I tried to narrow it down to like, okay, what are the two things I get better at?
Hmm.
And part of it was just I needed to be more disciplined with my eyes. Like I was looking all over the place. There were some game plan parts of it that I was like basically told the coaches afterwards, like, hey, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to do these different things because I think I need to play with better eye discipline. I've always gotten through reads really well, and there were too many different things going on, and I just wanted to rip through reads, like give me progressions. And so going into the next week, kind of made some adjustments there. Had another week under my belt of like going through as the starter, and I think combination of all that is what led to me having a good game against Jacksonville.
And what
Really,
were
us just moving the ball a lot better on offense in general.
yeah, and what were the feelings after your first win as an NFL quarterback? I mean, was that what were your emotions? I mean, that had to be on cloud nine.
Yeah, I mean it was a Monday night game overtime, and I
Mhm.
think we won like 38-35 or something like that. So we were scoring a decent amount. But I would say like throughout the game, it's just I wasn't really thinking about it a lot other than they just operate like
Yeah.
lean on every quarterback's got to lean on their playmakers. Like just do the same thing. Like just put the ball where it's supposed to go, operate the offense, and let the score kind of take care of itself. And so yeah, I kind of did that throughout the game. After the game, like I don't really get too up or down to be honest. It was a cool moment.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely like felt like appreciative of the moment, but I wouldn't say it was like all right, like I accomplished that. Like we're on a short week to go play the Colts, so it was kind of enjoy it for a little bit and then get rolling on the next one. And I think once you have like a game like I had against Pittsburgh, where you're like, all right, that wasn't great. It's not my best. I didn't play my best. And then you go to Jacksonville, and so you experience a low with the Steelers, and then you experience a high of like, okay, we won the game. Wasn't like I played perfect, but like I played really well, and so that is pretty motivating to get into the next week of like, all right, like I kind of found my groove a little bit.
Yeah. And obviously, being on a Bengals team, what's that offense like? I mean, why is it so dangerous? Obviously, Jamar, Joe. I mean, it's just T. Higgins. What makes that offense so unique and so dangerous?
I think we got a lot of weapons, and I think our coaches do a really good job of um, making other teams feel that. Like there's plenty of good players on other teams that maybe they don't fit the scheme that well, or they haven't molded the scheme to fit the player. And I think here we've molded the scheme to really fit what we're good at and highlight all of our players' strengths. And you get to see really high level execution. We've had the same offensive play caller for 6 years or something like that. And so I think it shows like each year, you can kind of expect us to be pretty explosive on offense, and I think everybody plays a role in that. But the obvious ones are Joe's really good, Jamar's really good, T's really good. There's all these highlight players, but I think the scheme does a good job of really maximizing and getting the most out of the skill set of the players.
Yeah. And what has it been like to be on a team with Joe Burrow? What's that been like for you?
Good. I think it was really beneficial, especially early on when I was here to be able to. I was sitting on P squad, so I'm just getting to watch the operation and kind of get to became close enough with him where I could kind of ask, why he did certain things because I'm sitting back there during the game, and for the most part, I'm making the same decisions as him as I'm going through because I know the play call and I'm watching the defense. There'll be sometimes you're just like he just went completely away from where I would have gone. It's like, oh, like what made you get over there? And having that conversation is really beneficial. And then, I think with anybody, that is in the room, you learn, the strengths and weaknesses of the guy, and you have a very upfront you have a front row seat to watching them operate the highs, the lows, all the different stuff. And so got to experience that with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, and then got to, obviously going on my 5th year here with Joe, and it's been fun to be a part of, but definitely really helpful for my development and how I see the game and how I operate.
Yeah, and obviously, What's one, what's the biggest thing you've learned from Zack Taylor? Obviously the head coach who's done a great job there. What's one thing you've learned from Zack?
The one that stands out to me is I remember one time I was going with the threes. There was a guy that ran a certain route. I was late to it because you could tell I was waiting to make sure that he ran the right route, and I waited for him to make the break and then throw. I remember we're sitting in there, and he goes, "Hey, look, I know that I know why you're late here. You're late because you're making sure this guy's going to run the right route. You want to make sure it gets completed, all that." He's like, but at the end of the day, throw this on time like you want to. Assume he's going to run the right route. Everyone in this room is a former quarterback, and we know, if you throw with anticipation and all that, and for some reason he doesn't do the right thing, we're not going to come back to you and say, "Hey, what the hell? That was incomplete." We're going to go tell the receiver to know what he's doing and run the right route. So don't fall into bad habits, just trying to make sure the play works and being too worried about the receiver or anything like that. I think I fell into that trap a little bit earlier in my career in the NFL, and then also just in college, like not playing with anticipation because you really want to make sure it gets completed, and that's not the way to play your best.
Yeah. Another thing about you, obviously, is you've led on the huge stages, like you've talked about. Being the quarterback, you're the leader. What is your personal, definition of leadership, Jake?
I might be kind of a contrarian here, but I think some of the leadership stuff just gets totally overdone and creates quarterbacks that are too quick to fall on the sword for every issue and clutters their mind with a bunch of issues and doesn't allow them to really focus on the one or two things that they can actually control that are going to move the needle. So, I mean, as far as like the leadership stuff, if you really said like, "Hey, you got to answer this question," I'd say just whatever the best version of yourself is. Like, if you're really a hoorah guy, like yeah, be the best hoorah guy you can
Yeah.
be. If you're not, be the best version of yourself. Interact with your teammates. Don't be an asshole. Stuff
Yeah.
like that. Where it's like, and but I think that if you're really like trying too hard to be a leader, it can come off as corny. Everyone in the room knows it. It's cringy, and I would really push people away from that. And I think sometimes with quarterbacks and leadership, the receiver didn't show up to class on time, and you're kind of put in a position where it's like, oh, the team culture depends on everyone getting to class on time, or this receiver, didn't run the right route. Like the quarterback's got to handle that because he's a leader. It's like, well, no, that's why the receiver coach has a job. It's his job to make sure everybody's running the right route. You can step in and help facilitate if you got some comfort doing that. But at the end of the day, like especially in the NFL, and more so in college with NIL, like you're getting paid some big boy bucks to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's your job to know that. It's your coach's job to make sure you know that. And that allows the quarterback to, okay, let me focus on was my eye discipline good?
Yeah.
That's something I can actually control that I'm worried about 500 different other things that I don't really have control over. Then I'm not really going to address it because it gets lost in the shuffle of the million other things I'm trying to keep tabs on.
Yeah. Something you mentioned that was interesting was the NIL. Obviously, when you were in college, that wasn't really a thing. Do you think that's hurting the game of college ball, the NIL, or do you think that is, what's needed for college ball?
I mean, I think you got to make it. I think you got to make a decision as college sports. Like, I think the first thing that started hurting was all of a sudden coaches making millions and millions of dollars. It's like that doesn't sound like an amateur sport to me. So I think NIL. I think it's what's fair to the players. Do I think that there's different headaches with it? Yeah, of course. Like do people is everyday free agency probably, and there's different shady things happening. Yeah, but if you're saying that those weren't happening before too, you're a liar or you're not in touch with reality. So I think for all the people who are like, oh, it's ruining the game, it's ruining the game. It's like, there's a lot of coaches making a lot of money. And if we really want to make this an amateur sport, just decide what a livable wage is for the area and pay them that. That's how they used to pay the players. And so, if you are a coach making a couple $1 million coaching an amateur sport, then, you're kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth. And so, uh, if we want to make a lot of money and the schools are making a lot of money, everybody's making a lot of money, but then you draw the line with the player, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I agree on that. I think it should be. I think they deserve it, and obviously, if the coaches are making that much money, so should everyone else now. What is your biggest tip of advice for someone who's looking to make it to the NFL like you once were? What would that tip of advice be?
I think you live and die by your habits, and you live and die by your routine. So I think a lot of people can fall into the trap of like, oh, once I get to college, like I'm gonna, be really dialed and create these habits and watch a ton of film. But like, I'm not gonna do that right now because I'm only in high school. It's like, you know, there's a certain process, there's a certain amount of time, like when you're trying to figure out what the best routine is for yourself. Like there's some trial and error involved in that. So like for me, like I was going through that trial and error for 4 years on practice squad of like, okay, what would the ideal week look like? So when I did, all of a sudden, with not very much heads up, it's like, hey, it's week whatever 11, and now you're the starter. I wasn't having to spend the first few weeks trying to figure out what my routine was. Like I knew I had an idea of what it was. I made adjustments along the way, but I would really encourage, um, anybody pursuing anything, like figure out what your routine is, stick to it, have the discipline, and what better time to start than now? Don't make deals with yourself like, oh, okay, when this happens, then I'm going to do this. It's just do it now. Find ways to do it now, and make the adjustments to whatever you think you need to improve on, and have the discipline to do it. I think there's a lot of factors that go into me making it to the NFL. Some of them have luck, but some of them I have control over. And so, the ones that you can't control, do everything you can to control them. And I think at the end of the day, if I didn't make it to the NFL or when I got cut in Minnesota and I never got a call back, like I'd sleep well at night knowing I worked really hard. I put everything I had into it. And if I was in a situation where hey, it just didn't work out the way I wanted it to, so be it. I'll move on with my life with a sense of pride of like, hey, I didn't leave any stones unturned, and I have no regrets about the amount of time and effort I put into it. And I think that's really all you can ask for and strive for.
Yeah, and going to sleep knowing you gave it your all and worked your ass off. I think that's all that you need now. This is the underdog talk, and it is. I do believe the underdog always prevails. What was one underdog moment in your kind of football career where the odds were stacked against you? Obviously, we talked about the practice squad and stuff like that. But what's one moment where people don't know about where the odds were stacked against you? You kind of just overcame and did your thing. What would that moment be that stands out to you?
I mean, I think mine is I just keep going back to the P squad years of like,
Gotcha. Yeah.
imagine I lived 4 years straight of being like, hey, we think you're a decent player, but not good enough to be on the roster. It's not really my perspective on like what's considered like some traumatic underdog experience. Like it wasn't traumatic or anything like that, but it was a grind, and it
Yeah.
was having to really fight like the mental battles of like I just got to keep working at this. And there's every time I got cut, there was a path in the road of like, screw this, I'm going to stop putting effort into this. Like I keep putting effort into it and coming up with the same result, or just double down, figure out a way to